So this happened.
If you would like to know what pure, unadulterated horror looks like, it looks a little something like this.
Yeah, so my big palette's the one that I spent hours and hours making, taking out all of the product from all of my palettes, repressing them into pans, fell off my desk, and a bunch of them shattered. It was really frightening, but it turns out that it's gonna be okay. And I got all of the product here, and so today I'm gonna show you a little bit of how I cleaned up the mess and how I recovered the product that was broken and like on the floor and everywhere. And then the second part, we're going to talk about repressing eyeshadows. This is the last you will see of my face, I think, for this video. I hope that if anybody has this problem or finds themselves in this situation, that this video can help them recover and fix things and not panic, because it is all fixable. It's just gonna be a little bit of time. So that's something that is to be grateful for, but it's gonna be a pain. So let's get started.
Hey, so my abject panic has subsided. I think it's gonna be okay. So I'm actually gonna take a second to try and show cleaning this up, how I'm going about fixing things. This is my purple palette. I've done the red and blue ones already, so that's how I know it's gonna be okay. The red one was definitely the one in worse shape. Here there's some stuff that's upside down. I don't really know what the status of it is. I do have some product out here that is broken, but is mostly in the same area. So a lot of what I've been doing is first kind of identifying what are the things that I can get up easily without too much cross-contamination. For the most part, I'm leaving the ones that are face down for a bit, just in case. Like earlier, I had one that I picked up and it was broken underneath and it had powder around it. I don't want to touch any of the stuff that's upside down yet. I'm armed with some scrap pieces of paper, a credit card type deal. This is my VAB Rouge card. I figured was appropriate. This is my notebook. This has where all the paper comes from, but it's a clean-ish flat surface. I have a palette knife, which I use for art stuff, and off camera I have my trusty bath towel, which never leaves my side ever, apparently. So I'm gonna clean this up first. It's the most contained. I'm gonna take my card here. Hopefully the shine's not too bad. And I'm gonna just sweep this up. I'm gonna take the edges that are torn, because they'll be a little bit softer, and just scoop that in here. I did get a little bit of cross-contamination with this yellowy shade, but I'm going to worry mostly about cross-contamination when I go to repress. I have my shadow here, and I'm just taking the paper, folding it up like a taco, and then doing this deal. So that gets at least most of the product back into the pan that I'm setting aside later so that I can repress them. Here I have what is, I believe, yeah, so this shadow broke kind of in part. I'm gonna zoom you in a little bit. So similar to what I did before, is I'm just coming in here with my paper, scraping this up. Not worried about cross-contamination at the moment. Making my taco and just putting it in the pan. And so it's getting set aside for repressing later. later, I mean tonight, because I have no life. Got a little bit from very obviously Buried Treasure. This eyeshadow is so weird. It's one of those I've got like etched into my memory. I think it's the first time I ever like encountered glitters in mattes. And I remember thinking, why the hell would you do that? Which I think is what everybody else thought too. So it was important to me to not disturb this, or to keep it as undisturbed as possible. So you got a little bit of, there's a little bit of Buried Treasure in here, so I'm gonna just pull that out. And then I can also see, actually this looks like two different colors. So I'm gonna take the more gray looking ones. These may not be different, just because like they're getting flipped over in the pan and it looks like that darker brown. I don't know if it's coming up on camera. So I think it might just be like the bottom of the pan, like where it's like super smooth from where it's pressed into the bottom of the pan, versus the top where it's been rubbed off a bit. And now that I think about it, I know exactly what shatter this is, because I remember being like, that's really strange. So luckily it does appear to be all one color. Taking that paper and just kind of wiping it off a bit off camera so there's not a ton of residue. This looks to be mostly okay. Just got some stuff on top that I'm just rubbing off. Looks like some of the glitter from Buried Treasure got in there. Taking kind of all of the leftovers and just putting them into a pile. I'm generally of the opinion like there's diminishing returns with respect to like how little product like broke out and whether or not it's worth saving. There were a lot of shadows in here that like little bits broke off, but I'm not worried about it. Like it's more stress to try and figure out how to get them back in the pan or to repress the whole shade than it is to just be like, you know what, can't save everybody. Alright, so now I'm gonna look at what's left and trying to ascertain what's broken like in the pan, but maybe it didn't fall out of the pan yet. So I'm actually, what I do is I blow on it. Looking at these, and it looks like stuff broke out, but it's relatively still secure in the pan. This one looks okay. We're gonna subject it to what I call the tap test. This is something that I do when I depot. Sometimes you can get cracks under the surface that, when you're least expecting it, will come up through the top, through just like a little jostling. But this looks fine, about what I would expect for this eyeshadow. This one looks like it's missing a chunk. I'm gonna kind of just push on this a bit, smooth it out. I think we'll be fine. So I'm actually gonna pick it up and hold it like parallel or perpendicular to my face and then blow on it again. And there we go, that's what's left, we're good. So I am absolutely filthy. This is a dirty accident. Yeah, that's all I got. All right. So before we get started, here's what I've got in my tool chest. A lot of what you see here is similar to what I had when I was cleaning up. I have my card, I have a little palette knife, I have these little scrap pieces of paper for shoveling. In addition, I also have isopropyl alcohol. This is 91%. The highest percentage you can get is best, although any isopropyl alcohol will work. The difference largely is drying time.
Then I also have these eyedroppers here. This will be for dripping the alcohol into the pan. I also have 2 empty pans, which will be used for pressing. Finally, I have some Kleenex, which will be used for pressing as well. And on the side here, I have a bottle of micellar water, which is helpful for cleaning. I also would recommend, if you would like, to have some kind of lotion on standby. The alcohol will dry out your hands like crazy. If anybody has ideas for grinding up powder or for scooping up powder that aren't a credit card or paper, I would love to hear it, because every time I do this I think there has to be a better way to do this, and then there's not. So I'm going to clear all of this off and get a shadow set up and show you how we're going to proceed. Alrighty, so here I have a shadow on my plate, and I think this will be a good way to kind of show you how I go about doing this. So I'm actually gonna break one of my lights and hopefully bring it a little closer so maybe you can see a little better. I don't know to what extent you can tell, but the shadow has a few of the things that we're looking for in terms of like before we start repressing. You can see here it's got, or hopefully you can see here, it's got a few flakes of another shadow in it. And this is a great way to illustrate the first step of what you're doing. You're gonna bring the shadow onto your plate and look for essentially contamination. You're looking for dust, hair, food, anything that might have been on your floor that got pulled into the shadow. And you're gonna do your best to try and get it out. And this is hard to do when I've got a hand holding a light, but hopefully you'll get the idea. You're just gonna kind of get it out as much as possible. Some of this will be easier. Some of these will be easier to do than others. But this was, at least to my eye, the most visible contamination that could get pulled out. And so I'm gonna set this down for just 1 second. So I'm doing my best here to kind of see if you can get any kind of light, any kind of clear white light up close to your shadows that'll help you see the contamination. So I've got, I think, most of it out. I'm gonna take my little card here and I'm gonna get it off the thing. And then for this one, this was broken in a couple of different ways and it was failing the tap test. This one I'm actually gonna end up scooping out of the pan, grinding it, and repressing it. Because even though it was mostly done, we still want to make sure. And this is actually not one that I repressed myself. This is from the actual palette. This is just a depotted shadow. There's some kind of lawn work happening outside, even though I live in the city, so that really doesn't make sense. But now we're gonna take this and grind it up. I'm just taking this card and using the edge of it to pound the product into as fine a dust as I can get it. I neglected to mention that I have a towel in my lap, and whenever I pause at something, I just go ahead and clean the surface of whatever I'm working on. So I'm gonna take my dropper, grab a little doodad full of alcohol. It's gonna leak because it has a hole in it. And I'm just putting a few drops here on the bottom first. The reason why I'm doing this is because we're gonna try and get all of this powder soaked. And I'll give a little bit more detail about that when we get there, but putting it on the bottom helps it soak through without having to put too much in it. So next I'm gonna take one of my pieces of paper. As I mentioned in the cleanup part of this, I like to use the torn edge because it's a little bit softer. And I'm just gonna scoop this stuff right up in here. There is excess, but I'm not super worried about it right at this juncture because there's gonna be excess anyway. I try and very often fail to have the surface dry. If the powder gets into the alcohol on the surface that you're working on, it will like turn into like a sludge, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that, but it just kind of makes it a little bit less efficient. So now I'm making my taco and tapping as much product as I can get into the pan. Got a little mountain here. I'm gonna put it to the side. If you are finding you're having a hard time getting the product into your piece of paper, actually just grabbed a little eyeshadow brush and you can sweep it like a broom. So I'm actually not gonna put this in yet. I'm gonna go back into my alcohol and grab some more. And I'm just gonna drop this in here. I'm gonna maybe poke it in a little bit. And you'll see as we do this, and maybe a black shadow wasn't the best place to start, but as we add alcohol, it will kind of decrease in volume a bit. So once that's done, I can now put the rest of it on. And then I'm just gonna get the rest of this soaked until it's wet, but I don't have pools of things. And this is one of the reasons why we put alcohol in the bottom, is we can be mostly sure that when it looks like this, it's probably wet all the way through. So now I'm taking another pan and my Kleenex, and I'm wrapping the Kleenex around the pan and then getting like a smooth surface here. Then I'm taking that and very slowly pushing it down on the product. I'm also using the tips of my fingers to make sure this pan is aligned with the edges of the other pan. So you'll see we have some excess here, and I'm actually gonna pull the pan out, but essentially we're just kind of scooping this back in. If you were a responsible adult, unlike me, you would do this with your card or your palette knife, but apparently I'm 4 years old and like to make. So once that's in, you're gonna take your little doodad again, and you're gonna have excess, and you're gonna have to like make peace with that. So put that in, and then I'm gonna press, I would say firmly, but not hard. And what I typically do is I count to 30 in my head. Picking that back up, cleaning up some of my excess, and then pulling that out. You can, if you want, do, you know, if it's important to you to not lose any product, you can keep picking up this excess. However, I would caution you very strongly against pressing too many times, because ultimately it will end up being pressed too hard and you'll have a hard time getting any product out of it when you're done. So here is my freshly pressed shadow. I'm gonna clean up my hands off camera and talk a little bit about a couple of things to note. So this is gonna dry for about 24 hours. You can have them dry for a less long period of time, but I generally find that 24 hours is a good sweet spot. I literally just made that worse. If it's a little colder where you live or a lot more humid, it might take longer. While it's drying, be sure not to touch it, particularly if it's a matte. The oils in our hands will get into the product and not necessarily ruin it, but it will change the texture and the way that the shadow performs, and not necessarily in a way that we have a lot of control over. So I'm putting this off to the side, and then I'm taking, you can either use the alcohol or the micellar water. I'm actually using the micellar water in the hopes that my hands won't dry out as fast. And I'm cleaning this surface. You can use the alcohol, and the alcohol will work a lot better. I'm gonna take a break, actually wash my hands because this was excessively messy, and we'll do another one. Alright, so now we're gonna do a shimmer. This is Sunflower from the Ace Beauté Classical Paradise palette. Similar to the Berry Treasure, most of it's still intact, but I got a lot of crumbles, and I really like this eyeshadow, so it was important to me to keep as much of it as I could. So I'm just gonna look at this. I see some hair. Might get some tweezers. Hopefully my head's not in the way. This one I'm not gonna dig out the excess. I'm gonna turn this over, tap it a bit, get all of that stuff out. I'm gonna rub that off. And I'm actually just gonna grind up and repress what's been broken. I feel comfortable doing this with a shimmer shade because they're a lot more flexible, a lot more emollient, and it should take to it better. I'm gonna get up close and personal here because I see there is quite a bit of contamination that I'm not gonna be able to get out. I'm hoping that it won't compromise the performance of the shadow too much. I'm gonna grind this bad boy up. Oh my sweet Jesus. What the fuck? When you wipe your card, be sure to like wipe the edge of it because otherwise what just happened to me will happen to you. Since there's so little here, I'm just gonna take my palette knife. I need like only a couple drops here. Something I forgot to mention is, so my rubbing alcohol is off screen, but you should keep the lid on it as much as you can because otherwise it will evaporate out of the tube. And that is not a thing that we want. So I'm actually using the same Kleenex that I was before, doing my thing, and trying to not get any shadow on this side. I'm just gonna press it in. This, when I repotted this, I'd actually used quite a bit of the product already, so it was already pretty shallow in the pan. So once this is done, I'm gonna leave my camera rolling, but I probably won't have very much in terms of instruction in case like something special comes up. And we'll just do a time lapse and we will finish this up in a few hours. Something I wanted to add is sometimes you can decrease or eliminate the amount of spillover you have by taking your card and kind of sitting it on top of the product. And then also when you go to press, instead of like pressing to your like full firmness immediately, to instead very, very slowly press in. It doesn't always work. Sometimes you just, sometimes the product is fluffy, or, you know, like mattes in particular, there's a huge change in their size, but sometimes it works and is helpful. That's all.
Yen Pie palette, which I'm not really familiar with what that means, but the palette does look kind of green. I think it's kind of an interesting twist.
Well, I'm gonna have to check them out.
I don't see myself. Alright, I think that is, yep, that's all the indie releases specifically. And, well, some are, I'm going to talk about some of the things that are technically indie, but I'm switching over to the Trend Mood page now.
How do you even
So first off,
explain that? Like, I'm sitting here thinking, like, maybe I should leave a comment for her, but I don't even know if I understand it. It's so much as just, like, for me, it's like just a meme to participate
I
in.
would say,
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
yeah, I think those are the ones I like.
Like, it's a reference to something.
I mean, it is first and foremost a meme. It's not a reference.
Oh, okay.
Like, it is a meme that romance stories in Japanese culture tend to be about high schoolers, and when it tends to focus on women, they tend to be enamored of
Their
an
senpai.
older
Yeah.
male or female person. And
That's what I figured.
yeah,
That's that simple.
that's what it is. And it is just like it's such a common thing that it just became a meme in and of itself. Like,
That amuses me. Okay, it's now the day after. They've been drying overnight. I'm gonna give them a quick poke here in a minute to make sure that they're dry. We didn't get right to 24 hours, but I'm also not really wanting to wait until 7 o'clock at night to do these. This is a do as I say, not as I do situation, but here we are. You have some cracking in some of the mats. That's completely normal and fine. And yeah, we're gonna test these bad boys out, make sure they're in good shape, and then get them in palettes. So I'm just gonna test these real fast to make sure that they're okay. This is Cafecito from the first Almar Cosmetics palette. It's okay. This is not the performance I have come to expect from this shadow, but this is like the third or fourth time I've had to repress it. When I was doing my original like depot and repot, it would not adhere to the pan, and that's something that I found with this new set of pans as well. So anyway, just making sure that it all comes up, it doesn't feel too dry. Gonna work in some of the cracks that we've got. I'm gonna move it around, see if there's any jostling in the pan. a little less vibrant. She feels okay. And also, like, she feels a lot less, oh yeah, she feels a lot less chunky than when I originally got them. So, take that with a grain of whatever you take. The cracks may not all smooth out, and it's not something that I am super worried about for everything. Some of them are drier than others, and they're just gonna have deeper cracks even if they're very firmly in the pan. I would say if you feel any movement when you do this swatching, like if it moves around in the pan or if the pieces move around with each other, like in relation to each other, that's probably a sign you need to repress it. But wait, there's more. This feels incredibly dry. But this formula tends to be, so you see how, like, let's see, this swatch just kind of lacks punch. It's not really what I expect from this formula. This is a Juvia's Place shadow. Again, I don't feel up to repressing anything, so I think what I'll do is I'll go ahead and put this away, see how it performs, and if there are any problems, I will reassess later. Most of these feel exactly the way that they should, exactly the way that they did in the original pan, for the most part. Unless I specifically called it out, it feels exactly the way that it did before. Okay, that's it. As you can see, my desk is a freaking mess. I'm going to put these back in their big palettes, get everything all arranged. I'm gonna do a different video on that arrangement, but at this point you should probably be able to put your shadows back wherever they go and it should be fine. I hope that you are more careful than I am and that this is not a thing that you have to do, but if you ever do, I hope that you found this helpful and can utilize this technique and any others that you have in your arsenal to recover things that might have broken. As we all know, makeup is very expensive, and I want to give you the tools that you need to maintain your collection even in the face of something suboptimal. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them below. And if you have any other techniques for repressing shadows that make it go faster or easier, please feel free to leave them below as well. I would love to have a more efficient way of doing this. Please also feel free to subscribe if you haven't already. And if you found this helpful, please do give me a like, as it helps me out a lot. And I hope that wherever you are, the weather is nicer than it is here today. Have a good day. Bye.